Democrats would like nothing more than to saddle the GOP with the label the party of no. And in our third story, it has become increasingly clear that the Republican Party will gladly wrap itself in that banner right through the midterm elections. But Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says that Democrats will try to change the 60-vote filibuster rule, which Republicans have been using again and again to block or slow down almost every piece of legislation. We'll ask our next guest, Ezra Klein, if it is possible to change a 60-vote rule with less than 60 votes. The Republican leadership believes that it will not pay a price for all their no votes, even against the extension of unemployment benefits. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell saying, quote, "We think the American people agree with our argument. The spending issue is resonating." And the deputy whip in the House, Congressman Tom Cole, says that the Democrats' legislative accomplishments will be overshadowed. "We feel like we are reflecting a broader mood of dissatisfaction right now. The American people want us saying no." But Democratic Senator Al Franken recently suggested that Republican motives have become even more cynical.
I mean, sometimes there'd be a legitimate difference of opinion on something, but sometimes it's been ridiculous. But I do think that this whole approach of slowing everything down, in many ways, I think it's so that they don't want jobs bill, because they don't want people to get jobs before the election. Yeah. I mean, it's a harsh thing to say. I don't want to impugn the motives of my colleagues, but I don't get what they're doing otherwise.
Meantime, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has now said of the 60-vote filibuster rule, quote, "We're going to have to change it. We're looking at ways to change what has been an abuse." Let's bring in Washington Post staff reporter, Newsweek columnist, and MSNBC contributor Ezra Klein. Ezra, the conventional wisdom is that it takes more than 60 votes to change a rule of the Senate. It takes 67, it takes 2/3 to change a rule of the Senate. But David Waldman wrote a thorough piece on Daily Kos basically saying that there is a way to do this with just a majority vote. What's your reading of the situation?
He's right, and it's been done before. So what happens here, as you say, normally it would take 67 votes to overturn a rule. But when a new Congress comes in, so after an election, we're in the 111th right now, after the election will be in the 112th Congress. When a new Congress comes in, it has to re-adopt rules. There are no rules. And so it tends to do that, and it does it by a majority vote, because if the rules don't exist yet, then there's no Rule 22, which creates the filibuster. So that is what Tom Udall and others have begun to call the constitutional option, that each Senate, each Congress can create its own rules, and when it does that, it's by a majority vote, and if it's by a majority vote, that means you can destroy the filibuster or do other things through a majority vote.
Well, just not to get too technical, if that was tried, there would be a moment where the Republicans would raise an objection, in effect, to proceeding to that, and then the Democrats would have to basically move to table the objection, and that's what they could do. If the tabling motion would only need 50 votes. But we've never seen this move before, have we? Is this a Senate floor move that's never happened? Because I don't have any memory of anything like that happening.
My understanding is it has happened, and I don't want to go too deep into this because I didn't bone up exactly on it, but my understanding is that 3 or 4 times before there have been rule changes made under this rule that, in fact, Mondale and others, in fact, that the 55-vote filibuster, the 55 vote, bringing it down from 2/3 to 3/5 happened under this rule as well in 75. And so, in fact, the constitutional option has been done in the past, and as often happens with rule changes, it doesn't make a huge splash. People don't remember it for very long. I mean, I think most people probably wouldn't know that until 75 that it took many, many more votes to take down a filibuster, and before 1917 you couldn't do it at all. So these things do tend to change over time, and then afterwards it sort of falls into the mists of history, and we get used to how it is now rather than how it was back then.
And of course, if the Democrats lose the Senate, not only will they not be making an attempt to change this, but they will be thrilled that there is a 60-vote threshold for filibusters that has to be overcome if they end up in the minority.
Well, that's what's, if I could interrupt you, that's what's dangerous about this right now. If they don't do it, but they put this idea out into the media stream, they have no idea, they have no guarantee the Republicans, when they come in either next year or in a couple of years, won't do it themselves. So once people people are really talking about doing this sort of a maneuver to kill the filibuster, it does become a question of, do you want to be the folks who change the rules or the folks who get the rules changed on them? And it does create a real sort of impetus to do it quickly.
It is that the Cold War sensation to it all, this mutually assured destruction possibility,
right,
that if you end up in the minority, you're going to love that filibuster rule the way it is. Now, what about the party of no and how it's working politically? The Republicans seem absolutely convinced, as they were, by the way, in 1994, that being the party of no and just stopping things was good enough to win the congressional elections, and they were right in 94. Can that work again?
Politicians have a tendency to talk about what they're doing and assume it's what's driving the election. What Republicans have going for them is that they're not the party of 10% unemployment, and they're not the party of the big deficit, because they are not currently the party in control. I don't believe that their signs will say party of no when they go before the voters, and in fact, I think they may take some damage for being against unemployment insurance, being against certain jobs programs. But the reality is, and the reality they're running on, is that the country is in bad shape right now. And when the country is in bad shape, rightly or wrongly, people blame the folks in charge, and the Democrats are in charge. So it isn't that they're going to be the party of no. They're the party of, you're not blaming us for this right now. And they'll come in and then people begin blaming them. But until then, they're in a bit of a safer spot in opposition.
Now, Congressman Paul Ryan is one of those rare Republicans who loves to throw himself into policy and real policy debates, likes offering voters something more concrete. Any chance that he can lead his party in the direction of offering something concrete?
Certainly, and I think, you know, Congressman Ryan has become a major force in Republican Party politics in the past year or two. Now, the question, though, is whether or not they'll sign on to anything he brings in, because Ryan has both the good fortune and the bad fortune to be interested in offering pretty large solutions. And when you try to do a large solution to something like the budget deficit, you've got really unpopular things in there, things like cutting Medicare substantially, turning it into a voucher program, lowering taxes on the wealthy, a lot of different things that are going to be a tough political battle. So he's not had that many Republican co-sponsors so far, but I think he will be, if Republicans come into power, one of the folks to look to for intellectual firepower and an actual policy discussion. The question is whether or not others will line up behind him.
Ezra Klein once again bringing intellectual firepower to Countdown. Thanks, Ezra.
Thank you.